second major stage of throwing. So to open out, I continue to have my wheel at full speed. Everything we've done so far is full speed. I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to pull it towards me a bit more than before. Before it was on the side, now it's towards me. My right hand, I'm going to lean on my left hand so it's nice and stable. And I'm going to take that finger and poke it down and in, trying to go straight down rather than at an angle. You want to make sure your clay is nice and wet at this point so it's sliding through your fingers. And then after you've got your hole, you want to get that hole down to about where you've got maybe an inch, rather a half an inch to a centimeter left of your clay. If you're not sure, here's how to check. Stop your reel, take your pin tool, and put it down and into that hole. Take your finger and put it at the edge of where that clay stops and pull it up. I can see that I've got about 3/4 of an inch there, maybe a little bit too much. I would want it to only be about there if I really want that base correct. So that hole will be covered through the process and we don't have to worry about creating air there. I'm going to start it up again at full speed and push down a little bit further so that I've got really only that centimeter or so at the base. Next thing you're doing is getting that left hand on the right hand, rather the right hand on the left hand, and you're going to use your left hand and you're going to cup that clay so it doesn't move anywhere on the outside. With the inside, you're going to pull straight out. One finger if you can do it, 2 fingers if necessary, and pull straight out into the left hand. You don't want your left hand to wobble at that point, otherwise your clay will get thrown off center. So right now I've opened up, and can you see inside a little bit? I've now opened up my clay. So I've got an inside and an outside. What I'm going to do before I go any further, still full speed, I'm going to clean up that top lip. We don't want that sharp edge. So we just take a sponge and press it down. We're also going to go inside and take a sponge and compress the base. We're pushing it down, getting rid of any extra water in there, and we're also pushing it together or compressing it. That's why wheel thrown pieces are so strong, because as you push the clay together or compress it through this process, it creates more stability or strength within the actual clay. All right, so now I've got my clay looking pretty good. It's mostly centered. We've got a wall in there. We've got an inside and an outside. The last major step we need to do is pull up those walls. They're too thick and too uneven. So to pull them up, you're going to now go about half speed, maybe even a little bit slower if you're having difficulty keeping your hands nice and steady. And at this speed, you're going to put 1 finger inside, 1 finger outside from each hand. You're using the side of your finger, not the whole side, just a little section at the base of each finger to press into the clay. The top of your fingers is locked together, so my thumbs are locked so it's nice and stable. And I'm going to take my fingers and put them at the bottom of the piece, and I'm going to press in with my outside finger, just with 1 finger. The inside finger is going to remain nice and even and stable. My outside finger is pushing in ever so gently. Got a little extra clay there. I'm going to go back, clean up the top, get rid of any extra clay on the inside, and then again, lubricate the edges so that it's smooth and will stick to my fingers. I'm going to do it again. protecting whatever I'm putting onto the clay with my other hand, stabilizing it so that nothing moves around. And you can see that the base of that is cleaning up much better now, looking pretty nice. I'm going to wet it down again, get rid of that extra water in the base. And then I'm going to take my wooden rib, and I'm going to bring the rib up the sides of it, and instead of using my finger on the outside, I'm going to use the rib now, and that rib is going to clean up the line of the outside. Just make that a little bit smoother and neater, straighter up as well. I can use my sponge to do that sometimes. That works really well, depending on what you want. And I can use my sponge also to clean up the lip. You never want a sharp lip, because if you're going to turn it into a pencil case or a mug, that could cut somebody. So you always want it a little bit softer at the top edge. So I take my sponge, make sure there's no water on the inside, clean up the lip, and everything looks pretty good. And that's a basic cylinder. Everything else can be derived from a cylinder. You can begin to form after that. The way to get this off the wheel is you take and add a little bit of excess water to the bat, not tons where it's spilling everywhere, but just a little, and keep your wheel moving very, very slowly. Take the wire tool securely between your fingers so your short won't slip. Push down the edges with your thumb and run it across the very base of the piece. If it slips off immediately, you're in great shape. Usually you have to run it through 2 or 3 times to release it, but obviously this is released entirely. You can let it dry up on the bat until it's leather hard, or you can use pot lifters to remove it to a wear board. And at that point, you're done. Let's see how we did. I'm going to take and I'm going to slice it through partially. And since it already popped off the wheel so nicely for me, it's actually more difficult to do this. So I'll move that side away and we'll turn it around here. When we look at it, our balls are of a pretty even thickness, slightly larger at the top, which I like to leave there until I'm sure what I want to do with the piece. The base is just about the thickness that we want. That'll leave enough room later if we want to go back and carve a foot out of the bottom, so we only have a tiny little edge left behind. So that gives us just about the right amount of space.